Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today guys, we are going to be discussing XRP. A few interesting things happening in the news. So we're going to jump into some of that. We'll also take a look at some of the data around XRP and all that great stuff. So as I get into the video, if you find it useful, informative, smash that like button. You know this by now. And if you are new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe? You can of course always unsubscribe later. Let's get right down into today's video. Okay guys, let's talk a little bit about XRP. So in the news today, we've kind of stumbled across some interesting stuff around transactions per second, specifically with an increase from 1,500 TPS to 3,400 TPS. Now, this might not sound like a big deal to some in the community, but it actually is a reasonably big deal. Increasing throughput is very important when it comes to blockchain technology and scalability for the blockchain and ecosystem as a whole. And so what we've seen here is this increase that is over 100% of what was normally being spoken about when it comes to the XRPL. Now, there are some in the community that are questioning whether this is legitimate, whether this is sustainable, and all that kind of good stuff. And well, we'll soon find out, I think, in due course as to whether or not this is going to cause a problem for the XRPL, or whether this is actually just the beginning of some really fantastic scalability when it comes to XRP and the XRPL. So that's the first thing that we kind of noticed inside the news when it comes to XRP. The second thing that's kind of cropped up is that Chris Larsen took to Twitter to basically criticize the US and whether the US have screwed over or the US government, such as, you know, Biden and Jay Clayton, Gary Gensler and so forth, have screwed over the US economy when it comes to the crypto market. I think for the most part, many of us can kind of acknowledge and agree that yes, the US is very much screwed, at least on the historical last couple of years or so, and whether or not that we are going to see a turning point when it comes to that. So I do think that eventually Gary Gensler will be out of the SEC and we'll actually be able to progress further forward with the crypto market in the US. But for now, it's not looking overly strong. And I think with the ETFs and everything else that's going on, I think that will be the out for Gary Gensler, and maybe we'll start to see a bit of a turning point for crypto and the regulations within the US. So that's the other thing that's kind of came up a little bit when it comes to kind of XRP news most recently. Obviously, when it comes to the SEC versus Ripple, some interesting stuff going on now. Obviously, we are only really a handful of weeks away now from the 29th of September, which is being dubbed the Victory Party, being held over in New York. So some interesting things I think will come in the coming kind of days and weeks around the SEC lawsuit, whether there is a settlement there or not with Ripple. And I think, yeah, it's going to be definitely an interesting month for certain. When we take a look at the data side, we can see that there are over 1 million transactions every 24 hours approximately. And, you know, for the most part, when it comes to the XRPL, you can do 1 million transactions at a cost of only about $900. So less than $1,000 for 1 million transactions. And it is quite impressive. If we were to kind of reflect on where Ethereum sits, when we can see that Ethereum has a cost of about $4.2 million for 1 million transactions, you can see that XRPL is definitely positioned very well in terms of moving money around the world. Very cost effectively, but also sustainable from an environmental point of view as well. Whereas Ethereum obviously is lagging behind quite aggressively, not only with its payment models in comparison to that of the XRPL, but also from a sustainability perspective. So it's great to see that the fundamental side of the XRPL coming through, even with questionable throughput, we can see that it's got really good transactions per second in terms of 1,500. If it is 3,400, that's fantastic as well. And all the way through to the transactions that are actually being, you know, utilized, over 1 million transactions in a 24-hour period. And this is something that is pretty consistent now, and it has a really low cost base to it. So that's really, really cool to see. Now, in terms of XRP liquidation, so we talk about like people trading XRP on the long side or the short side, you know, predicting which way the market is going, we have seen a 81% liquidation event for the long position. So we know that the price of XRP has been moving down a little bit, and that price movement to the downside has caused a lot of liquidations for XRP holders. Now, when I say holders, I mean like traders, you know, people who are using leveraged to basically trade XRP versus that of the spot positions where you hold it. So when we see an 81% move liquidating XRP to those kind of degrees, we can obviously acknowledge that's approximately $700,000 of retail investors that have been liquidated during this move to the downside that we've recently seen from the price action point of view. And again, I don't think this is a big problem, because if we jump into the data from a spot side of things, people who are buying and holding XRP, we actually see good accumulation as price has reduced. Okay, so we can see that there's 2,124 wallets that have over 1 million XRP in them, and there's actually 1,987 wallets that equate to have accumulated 42 billion XRP out of all of the circulating supply. A huge amount of that sits in just 1,987 wallets. And this is a pretty interesting point, and it will split opinions as to whether or not that's a bullish or bearish scenario to be in. Simply because if you have such a huge amount of the supply held by very few people, you have that argument around centralization and decentralization, and whether or not the market, when it does drop, or when the market does move up, we'll see a significant drop of that XRP that had accumulated at those levels, as in they'll dump on the market. And so there's a bit of an argument here. I think it's a positive when you have a huge amount of the supply centralized like that, because it means you only really have to worry about a handful of people. You don't have to worry about mass panic, for example, which I think is something that is going to plague the Bitcoin ecosystem shortly. So I do think this is actually a positive thing. And the other part of this is we don't know necessarily whether these are banking giants that are trying to get on board with XRP ahead of any potential announcements. So there's a few things there that we have to kind of unpack and try to figure out as to kind of what is potentially really good for XRP as a price action wise, what's good for the ecosystem as in the XRPL, the additional kind of things and developments that are working on that ecosystem as well. So I do expect further downside on the price action, and I do see this as a potential for more accumulation of XRP over the next few weeks and months. But let me know what your thoughts are on that down in the comments below. Let's go back to the studio. Let's actually jump down into the charts and review the price action of XRP.
Okay, so let's jump down into the technical analysis on XRP. So here we have XRP paired up with USDT. We're going to jump on over into the 1 hour BitGet chart here. Okay, so we can see that we're still technically ranging sideways. We did actually have this move up and move down. So I do think we have completed our B wave move now after recently coming down and getting all those liquidations that we were talking about earlier. So looking at this, it looks like we are kind of done with the downside, and we should be thinking about this move to the upside. Our target as a minimum would be a double top at 51.286. So that's going to be the immediate area that we're looking for. Okay, so if we go ahead and just do our sense checks here, it's important that we do, and we want to make sure that we don't kind of trip ourselves up by not following the rules of Elliott wave theory anywhere along the line. And yeah, so we're full right inside there with those wicks. That's perfectly fine. So that's not a problem. And then, of course, we're just going to do our sense checks on the lows or the highs to the lows here. Move this over to our wick that we had yesterday, which was a low of 49.121. So I'm just going to go ahead and lift that up a little bit. There we go. This gives us our target for our C wave sitting up here, basically between 51.765 and 52.409. Like I said, though, our minimum expectations would be a double top at 51.286. So on this hourly chart, you can kind of see here, we've kind of had the move down. We're just looking for this correction upwards, and we are still technically in a bearish structure here on our hourly chart. You can see here that we have this change of character. This is bearish. Okay, so for the most part, we have this little relief rally upwards, but it isn't going to be sustained in my opinion. Take this up into the daily chart, and we can still see that we're basically looking for this move down. Okay, and although it's possible that this isn't yet complete, I suspect that we probably are going to, the move upwards is not yet complete. I still suspect that we are likely to move on down here. It's unlikely that we're going to be breaching that much higher than the 50 and 200 EMAs that you see on here as well on the daily chart, and our progression to the downside is still very much valid. So we are targeting 35.174 to 39.214. That would essentially be a wave 3, and then we'll have a relief rally again for a wave 4, going down into a final fifth wave movement. Again, this is not a guarantee because at any point in time we can of course create invalidations of this structure, and for that to occur we are going to be immediately looking at the highs that we have up here at 67.5 cent. So we'd have to push this wave 4, for example, up here to invalidate the idea of a fifth wave move to the downside. Okay, until that happens, this is very much it is the structure, it is what has to follow, it is the direction of the market. So for now, we have to appreciate there is a potential move back down to 30 to 33 cent, the previous area of previous, or this area of previous support on the daily time frame. So yeah, all still very much valid here. We are, of course, below the 50 EMA and we are below the 200 EMA. But at the moment, at the point of recording here, the 50 EMA is above the 200. So there's a little glimmer of hope there. But it does look like the 50 EMA is on a path of crossing down lower than the 200 EMA, basically short-term price action being lower than long-term price action. And again, another bearish indication that things are going to turn ugly. Okay, take this up to the weekly time frame. You can see that we hit our C wave high targets. We were targeting out 93.76. We went to 93.8. So we hit the C wave targets as expected, and then we move on down. We were hoping that we were going to hold the area between 52.2 and 58.5. Unfortunately, we did not. We have at the moment kept above the weekly the weekly 200 EMA, but our 50 EMA is unfortunately above the current price action. So we are sandwiched between both the 50 and 200 EMAs here. And if we do drop down lower than the weekly and close a weekly candle below the 200 weekly EMA at 47.95, then yeah, we're probably going to be looking at deeper price actions and more bearish structures here for XRP. With all that being said, though, we still have pretty decent price expectations for the long term. So you can see a few things here, roughly around 557 to 1121 as current structures go. That can of course change, and depending on SEC, Ripple, and all that kind of good stuff, and victory parties at the end of September. Who knows where this is going to potentially be going? Based on the current structures, we have an idea, but fundamentally things can change. So for now, I think we have some further downside to enjoy some better discounts where we can see further accumulation on XRP. If you found this video useful, informative, maybe entertaining, smash that like button. I do appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all the notifications, and I'll catch you all in the next one.